HBP 2020 exhibit. In this house, we have OG, Arasy, Kezia, OO, Kak Derril, Tory, CG, Kak Rizqi, Kak Astrid, CO, Kak Maerel, Tania. Under this house, we're going to debate upon this house believes that the ongoing process of decolonization should include actively disempowering religions that were imposed on the country during colonialism. Without any further ado, we're going to call Arasy or Kak Kezia as Prime Minister. Arasy, okay. Without any further ado, Arasy, please, you have your time now.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember how we Indonesian have been colonialized by all other nations that are trying to take away what's precious into our land. We have suffered for many, many years. We have suffered for 3 centuries that on those to the extent of that time, we believe that there are still going to be further harm if we are still embracing the religions that the colonization actually brings on the expedition to Indonesia, right? Now, remember that colonialization has also bring a lot of burden towards our people, not only to Indonesia, but all of the countries that actually have been engaged towards those kinds of things, right? Now, for the setup is that we want our nation to actually be a truly independent nation, to not have any more ties that makes us remember about how the colonization can actually bring us those kinds of pains in the past, right, ladies and gentlemen? Thus, we believe that by ongoing the process of decolonization to actively disempowering religions is also something that is needed to make sure that those pains from the colonization will not incur in the future, ladies and gentlemen. Now, first argument is that, is it really justifiable for us to actually disempower these religions? First thing to know is that religions is something that people choose because they believe on that to that extent, right, ladies and gentlemen? No one is actually going to opt in towards a religion to actually offer their belief to something that is going to be to something that is on the very first day is being forced towards them, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that is happening towards colonialization, ladies and gentlemen. Indigenous people, they are being forced to actually believe on something that they doesn't really wanted to believe, ladies and gentlemen, and this is something that's very harmful in those era. Now, in this era, however, where colonialization is not really existing physically, we believe that when people are still when people are still believing on those religious teaching that the colonization bring, it will not give them the freedom to actually choose the best religion that they actually believe in from the very first place, ladies and gentlemen. Meaning, no, thank you. Meaning that these people is actually having a burden to still up in towards those beliefs that has happening towards from the colonization era, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we also have to acknowledge that these kinds of things, that why does the colonialization should include this disempowering religions, is that from the very first place, if people actually want to opt out of those religious teachings that comes from colonialization, people will have to actually be brave enough to actively disempowering this religion, because those exist people in society that they're still afraid about moving on from one religion to another religion, because the stigma that happens in society is that whatever the religion is, whether it is from decolonialization or not, if you are trying to move up from one religion to another, people will tend to portray you as a bad person, ladies and gentlemen. This is what's happening. This is something that we as a government should actually opt in furthermore, because we want to protect those that actually wants to opt out from this religious teaching, ladies and gentlemen. Thus, that is why it is very justifiable for us to actually disempower this religion. No, thank you. A second argument is that colonialist religion gives too much power even towards the area that are not physically colonialized, ladies and gentlemen. For example, is that if in one nation there are too many religion A, then even if those nation is not under the siege, is not under the colonialization anymore, those in power on the religion can actually still make demands on people that actually believing towards this religion, ladies and gentlemen. This is very dangerous. Why? Because those people, for example, pastor or etc., they can just simply say that this thing is actually bad. This culture is actually bad. Then the whole person that includes within those religion will have to be forced to actually think that this is bad because their pastor say that it is bad. This is something that is not. This is something that is that we actually want to prevent, ladies and gentlemen, because those people that actually that actually does not believe on this religious, but it is going to be forced towards them. It is something that's not going to be well practiced on the essence of religions itself, ladies and gentlemen. Thus, we believe that under these two kinds of argument, we're proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
So first clarification, the government side of the house say that indigenous people forced to believe those beliefs at the past. We say no, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to make it clear here. So this motion talking about decolonization, right? So this decolonization happened after those particular country already independence, right? So there is already so much choices for them. If they, for example, choose for getting to Islam, for example, it is because they believe those particular follow in those particular religion. It is because they believe on that. It is because they see those particular religion as something that is good. It is because they trust them. It is because it is something that they already believe from the past, or no matter what is the background of them believing that, it is their choices, right? So the government couldn't get into this kind of particular problem. It is because religion, it is something that's connected from it is something that is a relation between them with their God, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, also the government side of the house didn't bring the mechanism, so I'll bring how the government will disempower this particular religion. First, they will limit the development of those place of those particular religion. For example, they will limit the development of the church, mosque, for example, and so on and so forth. Secondly, they will put tax on those particular religion. Okay, we say that this whole mechanism will makes the government looks bad, looks evil by their society. Why is that, ladies and gentlemen? Because the government will look like they are biased. The government will look like they are glamorizing the other religion by the other, ladies and gentlemen. We say that it is something that is not good. That I will explain more in my substantive. And also, ladies and gentlemen, even when they say that, for example, this particular religion is coming from example from their parents because their parents told them to get into those particular specific religion, we say that this kind of particular case couldn't happen because first, religion is your relation with God. Secondly, society already progressive, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone already have their choices. Everyone could choose which religion that they trust, which religion that they believe, right? No one could ever force these particular people, right? Okay, moving to my argument. But we believe that we couldn't forget the fact that these religions have become that beliefs that most people already believe in those particular country. First argument, it is not the right of a country to disempower this particular religion. For example, we have, for example, Islam, for example, get into Indonesia by trading, so on and so forth. It is something that it is the way of those particular religion get into those particular country, but it is something that it is not something that those particular country could influence, right? For example, when we are talking about those specific religion, those particular religion is the place when they gather, right? It is the place of them gather, for example, with their friends, with their families, so on and so forth. It is the place that they could find their connection with the other people. It is the place that they feel that they are safe. It is the place that they think that uh, they have, for example, a belief to those particular God and so on and so forth. We couldn't take that way because it is something that is really important for them. It is part of themselves. It is part of their community, so on and so forth. It is not right of the government to take that away from them. Second argument, those particular religions also are not controlled anymore by the colonials. Why could I say this? For example, we have
Right.
Batak Church, we have a Batak Church, Secondly, we have, for example, Manada Church, Papuan Church, so on and so forth. This particular religion already get into those particular specific culture that is not hold by the colonialism anymore, ladies and gentlemen. This particular religion already get into those particular specific culture in our country that is not controlled by them. So the alternative for this will be, we want to keep this religious because we want to empower this, because this particular religion already become the part of our country. It is not the part of the colonial itself, but it becomes the part of our country, as I said before. For example, about a church and so on and so forth. It all based on their culture in our country, not based on the interests of the colonials, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so what is the harm if we disempower these communities, if we disempower this religion? First, we believe that
Right.
as we do that particular things, it will create conflict in our society. Why could that so? Because as I said before, the society will see the government as biased, right? The society will see, right? The society will see that the government glamorize the other religion than the other, right? They will, and also we believe that this and why this kind of particular conflict could happen. We believe that this decolonialization is become the part of a nation building, right? If we are talking about a nation building, meaning that those particular country is those, for example, developing country, right? If we are talking about developing country, meaning that those particular people in those country is not blended in. They still develop, right? They are not that blended in. They didn't the development of those particular country not already complete. They didn't even have the same values, on and so far. So when we, for example, glamorize one religion than the other, it will create conflict among them, ladies and gentlemen. Based on this reason, pros to oppose.
The reason why we want to decolonize the nation by taking away religions that was spread by the colonizers is exactly because the speech of the leader of opposition, it was done in a way where when they brought the argument of certain religions being a safe space for you because it's the thing that connects you to your family, to your friends, and so on. This is exactly the thing that we want to combat, right? Because the reason why it suddenly becomes a safe space, suddenly becomes a source of comfort, is the illusion remains that the only thing that can provide you safety after being colonized, after being attacked for your religion and your beliefs, being raped and being withheld resources from, is when you are within the religion that was imposed on you by the colonizers, right? And we don't think that should be what happens, because as explained by my prime minister, the reason why these religions were able to make it within the nation was exactly because it was done through unjust means. They were not simply innocently spreading the word as through trade and through so on and so forth. Because look, Islam did not get into Tunisia through colonialism. Christianity did. What they did through to spread the gospel was by withholding resources from indigenous communities. They simply do not give healthcare. They simply do not give food to certain areas that choose not to submit to the religion of the colonialist, right? Or for example, other things include giving government services exclusively to people who already enter the said religion, to people. That's why you have exclusive Christian schools, you have exclusive Christian hospitals that are only given through to the indigenous community who choose to change their religion to Christianity. And that's what we don't agree with, right? So, therefore, I have two responses to the OO's case. First of all, they try to argue to you about how society is already progressive, and therefore all of the religions that they are holding now is definitely a result of their choice. Look, we don't think that this is true, right? Because first of all, it is the only thing that is certain is that not all of the people who are now holding the religion, their ancestors believed in that certain religion because they gladly received it without any risk, because the risk were actually being attacked, actually being killed, and being oppressed because of holding your certain religion, right? So you do not know if the religion that your ancestors were believing in were truly happening because they truly believe in that certain God. But even if we think that within the current society, there's always a segmentation of believers, just because there are 10 people who claim to identify as Christians, we don't think that that means that all 10 are as devoted as the religion deems them to be, right? Because there's a certain segmentation of believers. There's there's going to be the devoted ones. We think that that's cool. But within that certain religion, there's also going to be believers who are just casual with it, who hasn't exactly found their comfort and their true God, but think that it's too much of a bother and they don't see any much choices. Exactly the reason why our solution is to take away the power, because the reason why we want to actively disempower is because these colonialist religions like Christianity already have too much platform and too much power to spread the religion even more. That means that you are taking away the voices of the minority religions and the indigenous religions that exist within that nation. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the opposite, right? For example, the screen time that is usually used on Sunday mornings to spread the sermon, for example, will be used to talk about, for example, Javanese Christianity, or for example, Javanese Islam, and so on and so forth. Other religions that previously would not be known of nationally unless you had to go to that certain areas, right? And the reason why we would like to do this is because here comes my first argument, is because exactly, we think that the most vulnerable entities that should be protected here is not the people who are already inside that religion, right? Because besides for having a devoted religion that you believe in, you already receive so much aid from other countries, right? From other Christian and other Catholic nations that are willing to give aid, to give certain programs and certain scholarships for people within you. But the ones that are the most in danger are the people who believe in indigenous religions and in religions that are going to go extinct. Because first of all, we think that inherently all religions need followers to satisfy their gods and their beings, right? That's the reason why all the religions will most likely seek to search for more followers and try to convince people to join their religion, right? But the thing is, if they do not find more followers, if they do not spread their reach, it is usually considered as a sin. You're most likely going to incur the wrath of these certain gods, of these certain people, and there's nothing else you can do about it. So besides for feeling guilty themselves because they incurred the wrath of their gods, it is further worsened because they do not have a platform to say anything about it, because their religion is considered as second rate, as something that is not special, right? Therefore, that's why we think that as opposed to the government being seen as oppressors for taking away the voice of people who are already privileged and already have such a big platform, we think that it's okay for the government to give voice to the people who are previously silenced, right? For example, people who think that people in Javanese religions that believe that certain lands should not be used to build buildings upon or should not be used for other recreational purposes because they believe that it might anger the spiritual residents in that area, and so on and so forth. These people daily have their religions oppressed and daily have their religious rules not follow through, and they are the ones who we constantly ignore. And that's why we think that it's fine to do so. But further, and to not let it go extinct. And furthermore, we think that it's only going to be seen as a way to preserve culture as opposed to a way to actively oppress these people. Because you're not going to ban this, you're not going to ban the existing platforms that they already have. For example, they still have church services, they are still going to have those Christian schools and whatnot. But what you're going to be taking away from them is, for example, the funding. For example, the exclusive spotlight and exclusive holidays during a year, and so on and so forth. And we think that that's okay. But furthermore, a second argument is about how this is not going to demonize the colonizers in the way that they should, right? We think that trips to spread the word of God into the most indigenous and rural areas of the community should not be okay, right? Because it constantly keeps the white savior narrative alive within those communities. The fact that most likely these trips to spread the word of gospel is done by Caucasian people, and you're only going to be seen these colonizers as those. And for these reasons, we're very proud to propose.
No holidays, no funding, no permission to build churches. These are rights that are not taken away to people who are controlled by white people or people who are unable to think for themselves. These are rights that are taken away from people who have adapted through these religions in tough times and have created a belief of their own, like the Christians of the Batak community, HBP, or the Christians in Eastern Indonesia who have used their religion as a unifying tool against colonialism. For these people's services against colonialism and their efforts of nation building, we don't think the state deserves a right to limit these people's very spiritual and private connections to their God, but not only that, but to their families and friends who have fallen behind in the past that they cannot connect with anymore because they are not given the holidays to take time to do so. This is very disrespectful to people. I have two areas that are very important in my speech. Firstly, I'll answer whether these religions restrict freedom or in any way have unfair advantages to these people. And secondly, oh shit, I haven't time. Kasih tahu gue time dong, kayak 1 minute, blah, blah, blah. And secondly, I'll talk about whether this policy is more accommodative for nation building, right? Am I connected? I am, right? Okay, so firstly, do these religions restrict freedom or in any way have unfair advantages? This engages to OG's problem of choice. And I think I have three very important answers. The first answer to whether these religions have an unfair advantage or that people don't have a choice to opt out was already given by my first speaker, that these decolonization efforts has happened for some, decolonization happens after a period of independence of some time. And in that period, a lot of different choices of religions have appeared in which these people are able to choose. So there's no reason why these people cannot get out in that period of time. But engaging to this argument of imbalance of power, I think if we look at the imbalance of power, it's likely to happen to these people who still believe in the previously colonial religion, who have adapted their religions towards their individual cultures, right? Because post-independence, the religion that is as far off to the colonial power are the religions that are the strongest. These were the religions that built communities to fight against the colonial powers. These are seen as the heroes. They are the ones who get the most funding. They are the ones who get the most members because they are the ones that are seen as the heroes of the community. That's why the one who holds power in Indonesia are not the Christians. It's the MUI. It's the huge religious Islamic powers that put their leader as a vice president, literally in the card, right? Who is there to protect the interests of Muslims. So we don't think that this is necessarily something that is true. Most of the time, these religions that has a colonial past are the weakest amongst the group. They cannot build the churches. When the churches are burned, the police don't do shit because they're in line with the Islamic thinking of that community that is a bit fascist, for example, right? Because it is influenced by a history of struggle and a history of discriminating these religions because they were brought by white people, right? But this is really, really bad because if you think about it, Kezia's framing doesn't make sense, right? If these people were forced to get into this religion, then when these colonialists don't have power, they will probably get out, which they probably have. But for the people who stayed, that means that these religions have become something that's very personal for them, that has become a way of life to them. So this answers two things. No, thank you. This answers two things. Firstly, it answers the fact that white people don't really have a power upon these people, because these people are also people who are more likely to be conscious of the fact that colonialization happened, but they stayed inside that religion because of a specific purpose that they have. But secondly, I think this answers a very important argument that wasn't engaged by the opposition bench, which is principally the states don't have a right to discriminate in this very private sphere of public life, right? Firstly, this is brought by my first speaker's point, that there's no difference in how religions have arrived, right? It's mostly a lottery of time and when those people came. So really, there's no justification for the state to control religion. Really, Islam didn't come by colonialization when most kingdoms in Indonesia were supported by the Ottoman Empire, right? Funded by them. Really, Hindu. You want to control Hindu too? Because Hindu was brought by the Indian kings when and now it's very weak. So it doesn't make sense to use colonialization as a method of arrival, as a method of justification to discriminate upon these religions. But secondly, these religions have been a form of privacy and serves as an exclusive benefit to these people. These are support systems for them spiritually and mentally that are not provided and unable to be provided by the government. Government bench needs to tell me when these religions don't have the holidays that are necessary for them to visit their graves, for example, or holidays that are necessary for them to connect as a family, in which examples that the state can give this exact same benefit to these people. Most likely, these people will be depressed mentally because they cannot express the things that they need to express to their spiritual ancestors that are still very important to them. This point proves alone that the state don't deserve this power and would make any point by the government team invalid. And this is the most important point of the argument, which leads me to my conclusion for this clash. Which freedom then is more important, to get out or to hold the religion itself? We feel that it's to hold the religion, because first we answered this by context, that people are already quite comfortable within this religion, so this will be offensive to an already vulnerable society, but also because it's a diverse state through history and culture, that the state don't have any right to discriminate on religions. What time is it? Okay, no one knows. I'll get the POI. Okay, no POIs. So second clash, which policy is more accommodative for nation building, right? This is very important because decolonization policies usually happens in developing countries, usually are very diverse due to historical and geographical influences. What we told you is that all of these religions throughout history has evolved, creating distinct cultures that differentiates themselves from white colonialism. I think all people who are victims of colonialism is also people who separates themselves from this history, right? Remember that these people suffered as well as the opening government bench have told you about. So this engages directly to OG's point, that these people are stupid minions of white people. So, and the important point of when we talk about decolonization is it's nation building, right? It's stopping conflict and division and trying to build a modern society. Opening government prevents that when you choose one religion to prioritize over another. This creates jealousy, this creates conflict, this creates a tendency for these people to seek help from the outside world. When they see that these people in these constituencies of Christianity in Indonesia, for example, are being super discriminated, these people seek help and those people speak out on behalf of these people. There's no indigenous defense against the government, there's a colonial defense. So when we talk about decolonization, opening government most likely empowers modern colonialism efforts. What they do, for example, is first creates the exploitation of these people then to be vulnerable enough so that outside forces can create political divisions through these churches. Corporate exploitation to American churches who want to create divisions in these societies so that they're not regulated by the government that is so much in division. But also these people, right? These are smart people who have been benefited by the systems of colonialism. So what you do when you discriminate these people that cannot hold their religion anymore is like what happens in China. Most likely they emigrate outside and they become refugees. So you empower another method of colonialism by harvesting the human resources that are so important for these countries to develop because they have the economic power to do so, but also the special intelligence that have been given through the resources of colonialism that will never be given back to these nations, right? So most likely these people will get out. Most likely these religions these nations won't be benefited from the people who were in this religion. I'm very proud to oppose.
Madam Speaker, I think a lot of the speakers in a previous opening debate talks about the access to religion as the main crust of the debate. But I don't think that's the main crust. I think the issue that is on the table wasn't an ideal decolonization processes, because I think that these countries have been colonized for like 200 years, 100 years, and they are losing the self-determination to decide what kind of country that they're going to be, what kind of political system that they're going to uphold in the future to build their nation, to build a society of their own with their own identity, the authentic identity. Why I think access to religion is not really an important issue, especially in regards to this motion. Two major reasons. Number one, I think opening opposition has been exaggerating the harms of disempowering religion. I don't think that when we say we disempower certain religion, we are limiting access for people to go and to pray to that certain religion or to pray to that certain God. I think what we mean here is like officially recognizing that as a particular an official religion. Like Indonesia, they have like 6 official religion, but other religion than that, you can still access your salvation. You can still access your comfort at your home, or even gathering with your community. Even we have Jews here in Indonesia. It's just that they are not recognized as an official religion. What's the consequences of this? I think the main differences of disempowering this religion is not about the access, but more about the access to political system, whether this religion has the access to go to politics and to influence the decision making of that particular country and nation building decision that they're going to make. That's the major differences. That is why in Indonesia, for example, in the past, we have like Partai Kristen Indonesia, we have Masyumi in Islam. These officially recognized religion have the access to nation building. And that's the clear line what we want to remove from, right? We're not going to remove their access. We're going to remove their access to political system and nation building, the vision. So Derril, they can still pray. They will still have their church. They will still have their community. They will still have all the kind of salvations individually if they want to. But even if in a scenario that they will not be able to access that salvation, I think the burden of team opening opposition is to prove why that is irreplaceable. Because I think if we'll trace back before even this religion came, before Catholicism even came to Indonesia or came to a certain nation in Africa or any other colonized country, they have their own religion in the past, right? But within a generation, they are forced to be changing their religion to go to the new religion. If the past generation can change religion and can change the source of salvation, I don't think that the current generation would have difficulties in doing that. I think if we are to disempower and people cannot access that salvation, we can, the new generation can shift to a new religion that is empowered by the community. I don't think they will totally lose their mind and totally lose their sense of salvation. I don't think that's an important piece in this debate. Yep.
But why must they change?
yeah, that's going to the second part of my speech. So the first part of my speech, saying that the salvation isn't as important as opening opposition would want to mention. There is another issue that is on the table, which is the process of self-determination in decolonization. So look, I think the ideal process of decolonization is to break out of the roots that has stemmed from the process of decolonizations itself. Why is it so important? I think the problem, if we're not going to remove the roots of decolonizations, we're going to have Rwanda all over again. Why? The root cause of the Rwanda conflict is because the Belgians installed a government on Hutu people that they preferred, right? This creates a certain division, a certain identity, a certain preference, right? That is installed by the past colonials. And this can have a very devastating consequences, such as we see the genocide itself. So I established that it's important to have an ideal decolonization process. But aside of racial, aside of Hutu-Tutsi division, what other stuff that can result into this catastrophe? I think one of them is religion. There are three aspects to religion that causes problems in nation building, in nation building processes. Number one, I think the main problem is the inferiority complex and the white savior narrative. I think Kezia has touched upon this, but that never really explained why. Right? I think here's the thing. There's an overlap between religion and the political system in which the colonials used religion in the past to justify their political system, their entrenchment of the administrative and political system, and they withdraw a certain amount of resources from this country. All is justified by religion. I think these are the white savior narrative that can still happen when, for example, Catholic enters Indonesia and people in Indonesia really empowers Catholicism. I think there's a certain amount of respect that they put upon these white colonials. To an extent, they don't realize the mistakes in the political system that was established in the country. What is the practical implication of this, to an extent that people cannot move out of it? This is the centralizations that happen in Indonesia. So yeah, okay. Derril was talking about HBP a lot, but let's talk about another religion here, which is the Catholicism itself, right? If we look at Catholicism, the region and the keuskupan within Catholic, even until right now, is actually inherited from the past, is inherited from the Dutch colonials. That's why we have only 9 region and, if I'm not mistaken, 30-something keuskupan, and not being able to further decentralize is because we are limited to the imagination that was installed in that particular moment. So this is the practical way in which we cannot break out of that nation-building agenda. What are the things that I'm talking about? What I'm talking about is also about hierarchy that was installed, right? There is a certain amount of hierarchy that was installed between the religion, within the center of the religion, which is in a room with the Pope and the keuskupan. So this creates a certain hierarchy in which the keuskupan cannot be against the Pope. So this is also translated to the political system, which overlaps, which means, for example, Indonesia cannot stand against the people in the Dutch or the people in the Portuguese because they are inferior to this particular people in particular. So what I'm trying to say is that religion overlaps with politics, and to break out of that boundaries, we need to leave that religion, or at least disempower it. We back to purpose.
Clarification. We think it's okay to have the religion or part of culture in decolonialism that coming from colonialism itself, because we said it becomes the existing proof of their struggle on colonialism era, right? Moreover, we know like these countries like 3 centuries already colonialism a country, so it already being colonialism, right? So we think it is impossible to disempowering this religion or like to be 100, right? Because so why we said it is impossible. Like we think opening words only talk about religion that should be prioritized of a country. We think that is in process of decolonialization is that maintain stability and unite the nation, ladies and gentlemen. It's like different from opening opposition, like right, that closing opposition will bring to you in this case, ladies and gentlemen. As closing opposition,
as closing opposition, we will focus on maintain stability and unite of the nation, because we said religion can be tools of a country for first introduce our decolonisation value, religion, and so on and so forth, and the second uniting the nation, Mr. Madam Chair. It is so important, right? For example, Pancasila is met in Jakarta. How do we make Eastern Indonesia people feel involved, Mr. Madam Chair? By having Christian representative that relate to those people, because Christian is majority religion in East, right? Remember on how first line on Pancasila that have revision from dengan ketuhanan sesuai syariat Islam to ketuhanan yang Maha Esa, right? It shows it because the existence of Christian representative, right, in the past also, ladies and gentlemen. So we think we should prioritize this case to maintain stability and unite the nation, ladies and gentlemen, not only talk about religion and so on and so forth, right? And 3 points of rebuttal. When CG said they want to close the access of colonial religions to nation building, we think it's different from us, ladies and gentlemen, that we want to give access because the form of people to participate building the nation itself is different, right? But you know, it is different participation, but it is like one purpose, ladies and gentlemen. They have one purpose to like unite the nation and maintain the stability itself, right? Thus, if CG won't close this access, they will create another box separated for these religious people, right? So under their side, they cannot achieve the unity, ladies and gentlemen. Comparison under outside of the house, we will like having this united nation in our case, because we want to empowering all the religion in the very first place, ladies and gentlemen, and do not disempower the others, ladies and gentlemen. And the second point, when OG said about like white's idea of white savior, we think it is no, ladies and gentlemen. We think it is not the case, because they have these people who already through the process of decolonialization, they have rationality in the first place on how to separate which one is ongoing operation in decolonization and which one is not. It's not, ladies and gentlemen. So we think this individual have rationality too, ladies and gentlemen, in this case of white savior, and that's the answer, ladies and gentlemen. And third point of rebuttal, when OG said like this is like a burden for this individual, for this indigenous people, we think it is no, ladies and gentlemen. Society, you know, like already smart enough. They know they already free, right? They already through the hard time in the past, like, you know, this is like their identity as for them, you know, to remember on how hard from them in the past and so on and so forth, how struggle they are and so on and so forth, right? Thus, if they should continue their religion, it's still being their comfort zone, right? Because different with culture, different with that strong culture from the West, the religion itself help them contributive in their daily life, for example, in their, and so they have like in them and their religion and so on and so forth. So coming to my first argument, why it is okay to empower this religion that we are imposed on the country during colonialism. First thing first, we have extension from opening opposition, where this individual already in their field, like as they first place, Mr. Madam Chair, they comfort zone, right? They found themselves during that themselves in religion during the road things, for example. They fought with the religion itself, for example. They found comfort in that, right? So it will be hard if government to disempower this religion like Christian and so on and so forth, because you know it already historical live in them, Mr. Madam Chair. And the second argument is that this is our extension as closing opposition, why it will become tools of government to make betterment of the country. Like I already said before, like this empowering of religion can be tools also for government to encourage them, Mr. Madam Chair, to to empowering, like the root of discrimination itself is that from the act of government in the past, right? Like this empower certain right. Moreover, like this is like historical matter and so on and so forth, right? That we will be taught in school and so on and so forth, right? So we think it's important to us to make the betterment of the country itself after the colonialism itself, to empower all religion without disempowering the one of them, Mr. Madam Chair, because you know the identity is important in the country. Identity on how you struggling the colonialism era, and so on and so forth. And we think it's not only like it's not only make us as the worst country, but it will make us as a better country, Mr. Madam Chair, because this is important for them to have like to have hold in their life, ladies and gentlemen, to undergo their life in the end of the day, right? Because this religion already lived in them in very long time, in the 3 centuries, for example. So it will hard to abolish, ladies and gentlemen. That's why very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Member of the House, I think that CEO are very dismissive to the characteristic or context that are being brought by my member by saying that if we don't disempower the religions, or we do not take this practice, means you're going into the status quo where the government are being a puppet or being chosen by the ex-colonized. This is what happened in Sudan and any other countries that are being colonized. I'm going to prove to you why that exactly is worse for the futures, and I'm going to give the explanations for that. The main contentions coming from CO is that first, it's okay to have religions because that's part of their cultures. We need to maintain them in order for them to unite the nations during this process of decolonizations. I have several issues to this. First, I think that we need to underline that we are still going in a process of decolonizations, meaning unifications is a facade if you're working under religion narrative during decolonizations process in and on itself. The examples are South Nigeria, where if religions, what happens are in South Nigeria, where if ex-religions are being colonized and it's being ruled by these ex-colonized religions, most likely they are going to nitpick the society to giving them the access to based on the groups who subscribes to that religions in and on itself. I think that this is even worse, and it will cause a disparity inside of the nations, and exactly why it will in turn turns into an economic collapse like what happened in the South Sudan. That's why it leads to a civil wars and whatnot. This is exactly the proof why unifications in and on itself based on their religions is something that is bad. That's why in order for you to thrive during the decolonization process is exactly by self-determination to fight and also be an anti-colonization. What does it mean? It means that we need to determine ourselves what is the religions and also our political systems. Because if you're relying on the religions narrative, most likely your political systems are overlapping and also dependent to the religions who are in power and in their sides of the house. That's why the idea of unifications and all other points coming from them is actually false. And that's why I'm going to explain to you in my issues why in our side it will lead into a better political systems which is going to clash with the both oppositions bench. But before that, sure.
Yeah, your context doesn't make sense at all. How can a government that is dominated by colonial religions, political power, would suddenly want to decolonize?
First of all, that is exactly why we want to create and also create a narrative why these religions need to be, we need to remove these religions, or even not remove, it's like unrecognize them in the first place, right? That's why the society needs to revolt against that and send the narrative that this is not about the religions. It is about creating a political systems and also recreating their better system in economics and stuff in the end, because in our side of the house, what CG wants is a better political systems where we don't depend on the religions, but we depend on their own belief. Because this will goes directly to my issues about better political systems. Now that we disempower the colonial religions, the system will be more diverse and inclusive, which means we do not choose a political representatives or even a chosen leaders based on the leaders' religions, and also in whereas the political party in whereas we much refer to their political party where everything's based on their group's political belief, for example, for like how they want to go in a capitalism way or any kind of way that eventually happens. This clash with harms or concerns about discriminations, right? Because discriminations will not going to exist, because now the only way for these people to prosper or seek salvations is to thrive in their own ability and their own community. That's why they will have a better economic systems that are not very reliant to their own religions. That's why economy system or economy access, we're going to give all economy access to them. That's why it is but that's why comparatively in our side, if the colonized religion still exists, there will be a continuous cycles of inferiority complex, and that is exactly bad. Because why? Most likely they need to wait for if the context that was being brought by the opposition's band is that they're being a minority, like what happened in Indonesia and whatnot, meanings that first, most likely they were very reliant to the helps coming from the Europeans, Catholics, like the Roman Catholics, like the Pope. That's why in order for them to thrive, this is a wrong narrative to begin with. The only way for them to thrive is exactly by joining the political systems. I'm going to explain to you the moral justifications why it is okay for them to, not following their religions, because it is something that was being done, that was being resulted from the sacrifications from their own ancestors. First, why decolonize should include disempower of colonizer religions, right? First, the status quo are problematic in the absence of disempowering religions. There's still ongoing process, and there's still an ongoing process of helps and also dependencies, or even religions polarizations that happens inside of their side. And also there's a group who actually against or having the revenge or any kind of hatreds towards these colonizations in the end of the days. That's why you cannot just have a religion narrative for you to forward in the government. That's why in order for them to be in order for them to have a better political system is exactly by disengaging them. Say the colonized religions are mostly minority and discriminated, right? First of all, if in our side of the house, if we're giving fact about their religion histories, how their ancestors are being genocides, for example, I think that they will understand that these colonizations are not something that is worth to subscribe, right? That's why in order for them to seek for a salvations, for example, they will most likely opt into a better situations, or they choose not to openly goes with their religion as long as they have a better economy systems. This is the kind of things that we want to propose for not depending yourself on these religions salvations, because exactly it's something that is toxic, and these religions in the past are forced to be embraced by them amidst their ancestors' suffering, and for 100 years it becomes salvations to save life. That's why this is a fake narrative coming from the past, and unknowing that the history is not is being remade by these colonizations, and it's not something to be known. That's why it is up to them to change it, and for a better political system, we're very proud to propose.
Before I move on to my clash, I think one thing that we as closing opposition should agree with the closing government is under the idea that the context of this debate should not be focusing on whether or not these people can reach salvation or not, whether or not certain people can go to their their prayer house or not. Because we say that it is important, but we say the most important thing on this debate, understanding the context that we're talking about country that currently doing decolonialization, we think the most important parts of this debate is on how certain group should prove why, whether you're using the colonial's religion or whether you disempower this certain religion, are going to be better for this country to actually do decolonialization. And we say that CO is going to be the thing that prove to you why, by letting this colonial's religion to just grow as it is and not disempowering them, it's actually a good thing to promote decolonializations and to make the country even more unite and prosper in the future. So I have two clash on this debate, right? Number one is which side of the house, the first clash is whether or not this colonial's religion create division. And second of all, I'm going to prove to you which side of the house that better for nation building, right? So first of all, whether or not this colonial religion that comes from the colonials actually create division, right? We agree with government bench that division is dangerous, right? Because we say, especially for nations that currently do nation building or decolonializations, the one thing that they need to promote is unity, because unity is the prerequisite for them, whether it's to build political system and so on and so forth, right? If we can prove to you that it's exactly the government side of the house that's going to promote division on that country, we should take this debate, right? So we say why division will not happen, right? The government side of the house argue to you that this religion that being promoted by colonials are actually promoting white savior, right? It's actually creating inferiority complex. We say it will not happen. Why? Two likelihood. Number one, we say we need to understand how do people actually spread religion. We disagree with Kezia context that saying that they actually spread it by forcing people not to eat and so on and so forth. We don't say that's the case, right? Because notice, country like Indonesia or African country that are very strong in culture, most of the times they are willing to die rather than giving up their culture, right? This is exactly what happened in Maya people or in Inca people that rather die than actually following the Portuguese belief, right? So how do these people, these colonials actually promoting religion in the country that is very strong of culture, right? Usually they're trying to do is usually what they're going to do is try to provide assimilation of culture, right? This is the reasons why the way of singing in Christian Batak church is still related to the cultural to the culture of the Bataknese people itself, right? Because the way in which these colonials try to promote their religion is through their culture as well. Moreover, they also try to promote this by actually providing local pastor and so on and so forth, right? Because only by promoting having local pastor, this is the only way for them to be easier to promoting their religion. What is the conclusion of this context? As a conclusion is that we say white savior narrative will not happen because most likely, especially in the country that's already being colonialized for so many years, the pastor is already local. The way on how they worship their God, even if it's Christian, is already being localized. So we say the white savior narrative will not happen. But second of all, the second likelihood why white savior narrative and inferiority complex will not happen is because in the context of the country that just gain their freedom, on the country that just doing their decolonialization, for example, is Indonesia in 1945, what actually happened at that moment, right? We say specifically at that moment when a country is just gain their freedom or just doing decolonialization, at that moment there is certain euphoria of freedom, right? Because they just free themselves from colonializer, right? What will happen when there is this euphoria, right? We said under this euphoria, we say that there's going to be a massive demonization of the colonials, of the white people, and the glorification of nationality, right? It's how Soekarno continuously say that Inggris kita linggis, Belanda kita setrika, and so on and so forth during the early 1945, because that is the euphoria of freedom. What does it conclude? It concludes that we say inferiority complex also will not happen because at that moment, precisely at that moment of decolonialization, there is a massive euphoria of freedom, right? So we say instead of we question why would they still having inferiority complex or still actually having glorification upon these white people when literally everyone, every radio and every TV currently demonizing these colonializers and so on and so forth, right? But lastly, we're going to prove to you why exactly their side of the house are the one that going to promote division, right? This is the moment when Tania substance really matter, right? Because Tania has explained to you, right, that these Christian people or these people that believe in that believe in religion that being promoted by colonials, even if they believe in the religion, they still actually having certain part of nationality and rationality. This is the reasons why even if Christian is religion that being promoted by our colonializers in Indonesia, this is the reasons why there are still heroes, national heroes that actually come from that particular religion. This is the reasons why we still have Captain Patimura that literally is Christian, right? This is the reasons why it's going to be bad when you actually disenfranchise or disempower this certain religion and especially block them from the political system, just like what the opposing government wants, right? Because that's what exactly going to promote even more division, right? Because then those people who actually believe in that certain religion going to question, I also fight for my country. Why I'm being discriminated just because of my religion, right? We see that's what going to promote even more division. And that's why it is so funny when closing government said they want to pay political limiting the political system to only of the group and promote division, because there's going to be certain people that are going to be angry because they feel that they have sacrificed their blood, sweat, and tears, but not being appreciated by the government simply because of their religion, right? That's why we say that unity is exactly going to be happen in our side of the house, because we don't disempower those religions. We let them just be. We appreciate them that they also fight for the freedom of the nation and so on and so forth. We concede that as closing opposition, our goal is not as grande as closing government that want to reform the political system whatsoever, but we say unity is still important because that's the prerequisite to actually promote other things such as political system or better economic system. But lastly, which side is better for the nation building, right? We say nation building is exactly going to be better than outside of the house, because when we are actually letting this colonial religion to stay, we can use this religion also to actually spread our decolonialization value. We can actually start to promote our new national language through this pastor, for example. We can promote our new education system and so on and so forth. That's the reason why nation building is also better under our side. Never been prouder to oppose. Thank you.